So here is Jurassic Park on the Genesis. As far as a movie licensed game goes, it's pretty good. Although, it does feature almost crippling slowdown. I mean, really, it's just slow and stiff. But it's not too bad. It's still infinitely more playable than most movie licensed games are. Also, it does feature a few annoying things, like if you fall from a significant height, you just sort of phase through the entire level. But there are also a lot of good things about it. You do have only 3 lives, but the password system works fairly well. Because after you lose the 3rd life, if you've put in a password like for level 5, well, the password's still there on the password screen. So you can pick up where you left off fairly easily. Really, if you bought this or rented it, you wouldn't be disappointed. It's definitely vastly superior to the Super Nintendo version, which didn't have passwords or save slots. Now, that game was a little more advanced in some respects, as it did have first-person sequences, but those were slow anyway, and you really couldn't aim or hit anything. And the top-down was just... it wasn't bad, but it still wasn't very fun. And also, I think Grant in that one looked sort of like Schwarzenegger. He had a very powerful upper body. Still, this game also had a few interesting sequences, like this little boat sequence. Even though it is kind of idiotic, because you see the water, it looks like there's maybe 2 inches on there, but if Grant jumps in it, he drowns. Really, when I first played Mortal Kombat on the Super NES, I actually enjoyed it more than Street Fighter 2, because at that time I felt the AI was a little more forgiving. Because let's face it, Street Fighter 2 was a hard game on the single-player mode, and really, unless you were exceptionally skilled with fighting games, you weren't going to get very far. Now on the Genesis, this game looks pretty good. There's almost no slowdown, and it's very playable. There's not a lot of sound effects, though, and the music is kind of rudimentary at best. But still, it's every bit as good as the Super Nintendo version, I'd have to say. Subterranea is a good example of a game that must be played with a gamepad, because you try this with a keyboard, and it's infinitely more difficult. The game itself is a take on Lunar Lander, except here, you have to fight monsters in addition to gravity. The game is very, very difficult. But with a gamepad, it's slightly easier, but it does get annoying after a while. It's definitely one where you do need save states. So here is Zero Tolerance. Now, this game is, in a word, exceptional. It has great music in addition to its rather superb graphics. True, they only take up a very small part of the screen, but what is there, and it is great. And you can see everything you need to see anyway. The frame rate is extremely consistent, and overall, it's just a very playable first-person shooter. If ever there was a definition for classic, Sonic is it. Really, it's one of those games like Mario. There's not much for me to say. You're Sonic the Hedgehog. You run around and jump on things. That's about it. It's still quite fun, even today. This will work with Genesis DS, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a very fun, portable game. Now, as for next time, Doom is going to come along in about 2 weeks. I'm still trying to learn my new editing software. I'm not actually using that for general editing, as I said earlier, but I mainly bought it for all the various accessories that came with it. One of the things I can do now is I'm going to be able to work green screen effects into it. The only thing is I have to figure out how to actually do that. So expect in Doom, the Doom book review, that I'm probably going to be a little self-indulgent. I'm going to have a lot of unnecessary graphical effects going on. All that's really going to amount to, I think, is I'm just going to put the green screen in the background and have stuff on it. And as time goes on, I'll try to make it a little more refined. But that's really what's taking Doom so long, is I'm just trying to figure out how to incorporate my new software. So, that's all for this little vlog.